Welcome back to my channel, guys, and in this video I'm going to share with you a couple of things that I think people should know. And if you are a Novatech member or you are someone who is involved, there needs to be a lot more clarity in this space, and so I am going to attempt to share some things with you guys, and by the end of this video my hope is that you guys will have more information in order to have better clarity and make better decisions or make an informed decision as to your next steps when it concerns Novatech. All right, so for all those that are invested with Novatech FX, Novatech.com, or Novatech in general, for everybody who's invested with the company or has an interest in the company, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on some things, but I'm also going to give you guys some data and some information that probably majority of people don't even really know, and I didn't even really know until I investigated. And shout out to Lady Luck who brought me onto the information, and after doing my research and my due diligence, I realized there's a lot going on, and I'm going to attempt to explain it in this video. So to lay the groundwork, this video will be a little longer than most of my videos because there's a lot of information that I feel is important that needs to be shared. And for those that are invested, I think it's worth your time to just sit and watch it and then share this video. And then don't forget to like my channel, like this video, and follow me. Anyways, but on a serious note, guys, I want you guys to really take time to listen to what I'm going to say, even go back and read the information that I will provide for yourself as well, so that you can get more informed and not be living based on fear and hearsays and what other people are saying and just the hype, but just get concrete evidence as to what's going on so that you can understand what the next steps may be and make a better decision for you and your financial situation, right? So that's it. With that said, I just want to say I'm not a financial advisor. All the information on this website is not financial advice. It's just for educational purposes only. I am sharing my journey, and I am sharing with you basically my thoughts on some things. So take it with a grain of salt, and let's get into it. All right, so Novatech was registered back, I believe, in October, September of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And what happened at that time was Novatech was able to register a business, and when they registered that business, they did everything by the books and they started to trade. One thing people don't notice in this space, and I didn't actually know until later on sometime last year when I told my trading partner, hey, let's create our own hedge fund because Novatech seems to be doing well, people want to invest, we can maybe do something similar. It wasn't until we actually joined the fund network and they actually took us as clients and they were coaching us as to how to set up our fund and how to do our fund, then we realized how challenging it actually might be in being able to get investors to invest. There's just so many rules, just so many things that are put in place to safeguard both the retail investor, institutional investors, those that are accredited, non-accredited investors, and more of the wealthy investors as well. So I want to be able to share with you guys kind of like the mindset of the country, the government, the states, the regulation board as to exactly why they have put these things in place. A lot of people would think it's because they don't want you to make money, and that's not true. It's just that they want to not allow what happened with the great stock market crash back in 30s, back in the early 1900s to happen again. And so they put a lot of parameters in place to protect current and future investors during that time to ensure that they wouldn't go through certain things like that. So regulations are put in place because in the past somebody has done something, has committed fraud, or some companies lost a lot of money, or they did a Ponzi scheme. Even though they were trading originally well and they were trading and eventually became a Ponzi scheme, there's just so many things that has happened in history to prevent a lot of people from building wealth and, more importantly, losing their wealth. So they just want to protect that. I get it. But in doing so, what it has done is alienate a lot of people from building wealth and from being able to invest. The average everyday Joe Blow who wants to put a little bit in and see a better return than putting like money in the bank and seeing peanuts, right? And that's all because of the past and the history of the past. So they leave a lot of the riskier investments to the more savvy, more educated, or more knowledgeable or experienced investors that they would deem experienced, which is not necessarily true, but they would deemed more financially savvier to those type of investors, because they have the net worth, so that if they put 100K, it doesn't hurt them. If they put 200K or a million, it doesn't hurt their net worth, and it doesn't hurt their bottom line, because they're more savvy and they have the money and they can bounce back. It's literally like a drop in the ocean for some of them. So I must warn that this video will be a bit longer, guys. There's so much I want to share with you, to teach you, and I hope it brings a little bit of peace and sanity into your heart, so that you guys are not all in this type of bubble where you're all hope and you're wondering and you're guessing, and every day you're checking your accounts and you're just scared. And I don't think anybody should be in that state of mind. It is not good. It's not healthy. So I want to share this information to really help you guys to find a little peace and to understand Novatech did their best. Give them kudos to that. They tried, but again, the system is not designed for companies like that to succeed, and there's just so much backlash with them. And the fact that they are where they are now, a lot of people are now dumping a lot of dirt on them, which in my opinion is ungratefulness, and you guys should at least give them their kudos, because they did try and they tried their best. And unfortunately, there's just some things that they outside their control that they can't control, that now they have to figure out what they're going to do next and how they're going to move forward, but most importantly, how they're going to treat those that believed in them up to that point, because again, they are very well known and anywhere in the world. If they don't, I just quite frankly pray for their safety and just make sure that nobody does crazy, because people do crazy things for money. So I'm just hoping that they kind of resolve this issue amicably, even if it takes some time, as long as you're going to communicate and solve this issue, right? So anyways, I'm talking a lot. Let me now dive in. I just wanted to give you a background story, because a lot of people think Novatech from the jump was not legit. No, they were. They actually traded, did everything right. But I'm going to tell you guys what went wrong down the road and where they are now and what they need to do in order to move forward, because at the end of the day, a lot of people have a lot of money invested in it, right? A lot of people have the money, and they have the right to know what's going on, and they have the right to ask what's going to happen, because they're invested not just in money, but in time, energy, resource, in their spirit. Everyone has invested a lot into it. So I think it's out of respect, Novatech respects that. But anyways, let's dive right in. So before I read this page, I just want to share with you a little bit of background story, so you guys can get to see a better understanding as to exactly what has transpired and what is happening. October of 2019, Novatech actually was registered with the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Business Authority. So they were registered in that country. Because there are no kind of regulations, which I'm going to read to you in a minute. However, I just wanted to share with you guys, for those that don't understand how funds are created and how they're structured. In a nutshell, what happens is anytime you want to start a fund, you have the actual fund, where you could be a hedge fund, it could be a investment fund, real estate fund. You have the fund, and then you have something called a GP, which is a general partner, and it's the general partner that controls the fund. And then you have the investors. The investors are the one that are kind of like in partnership with the general partners, and they both have like equity in this fund. So the fund is its own entity. You can think of it as like a company or a person, and then it has a set of rules, which I like to call the fund Bible, which everybody has to abide by those rules. And it's the GP that kind of formulates the rules. The investors have to agree on the rules, and then it kind of like works in that kind of motion, right? So what Novatech did was they put their fund in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and if you notice, they're also registered in Florida. That was where their general partnership was. So their GP was in Florida, but the fund actually was in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The fund has to abide by the local rules and the local laws. If there's no laws, then they're not breaking any rules, right? So this is very important to note, because it's going to form the basis of our foundation later on, and it's going to give you an idea as to why Novatech is where they are. So let's now read. I'm going to read this page quickly and then summarize it as I'm going along. So it says unlicensed Forex binary options, and this was dated back in February 3rd, 2022. The Financial Services Authority, FSA, wishes to advise the general public to proceed with caution when approaching or being approached by any person or representative of a business entity who may be offering forex trading and or brokerage or binary options. Before entering into any business arrangement or contract with such person or business entity, you are advised to verify that the service being offered has been properly approved and licensed by the relevant licensing authority. Please be advised that forex trading brokerage services are not licensed, this is key here, are not licensed in St. Vincent and the Grenadines while registered St. Vincent and the Grenadines business companies, BCs, or limited liability companies, LLCs, moving forward, are able to engage in any legal activity if they engage in forex trading and brokerage. They are doing so without a license from this jurisdiction. All right, I need you to know that you're in compliance if you set a company up here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There's no licensing requirements to trade forex. Therefore, if you're trading forex, you're not breaking any laws. Until such time that appropriate legislation is put in place to address forex activities, so in other words, until they actually make a law, there is no legal prohibition against BC or LLC carrying out that activity or from so stating in its articles of incorporation or articles of formation. It is, however, fully expected that the BC or LLC will attain the appropriate license to conduct such business in the jurisdiction where the activity occurs, notwithstanding that its incorporation or registration is in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay, so I hope that's self-explanatory. They're just saying that until licensing comes in, they're not breaking any rules. However, they do have to carry out the proper licensing in the jurisdiction that they're going to trade. So potential investors must be aware that if an entity is unlicensed and unregulated, they will be using its services at their own risk. Unregulated forex trading and or brokerage or binary option entities may not be subject to any code of practice or other regulatory law anywhere that expressly prohibits the business from making statements that are misleading, false, or deceptive. Neither are the owners, directors, managers subject to the fit and proper test applied by the financial regulatory authorities such as the FSA. So they're just saying they're not going to represent or warrant anything in regards to those activities. You're doing that at your own risk. If they are unlicensed, unregulated, you're doing it at your own risk, right? If they do misrepresentation or if they are misleading or deceptive, you're doing it at your own peril, right? This is very important because what I'm going to share with you next has literally changed the game. So take note of the date here. February 3rd, 2022. The next thing we go is now the same Financial Services Authority in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They did a memorandum and they sent it out to all the companies. So here you have to registered agents and trustees from Registrar of Business Companies and Limited Liability Companies. It says subject requirements for BCs and LLCs. Let me just start using abbreviations. Engaging in forex business activity. Here's the notice. Also take note of the date. This is January 6th of this year. This serves as a formal notice to all registered agents and trustees of the new requirements in place for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Registered BCs and LLCs currently engaging in and seeking to engage in forex business activity. Owing to the sharp increase, take note, in the frequency and the number of complaints and allegations of fraud against SVG registered BCs and LLCs which are engaged in forex trading or brokerage, and the potential detrimental effects on the reputation of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines as an international financier center, the FSA has adopted the following policy decision with immediate effect. Number 1, companies wishing to engage in forex business activities must provide a certified copy of requisite licenses approval from the jurisdiction authorities where their business activities will be conducted upon the submission of an application to be incorporated or formed in SVG. An application will be rejected if no such evidence is provided. So they're saying now, as a requirement, if you are going to register BC or LLC within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you have to provide proof of licensing requirement or proof that you're able to exercise your activity in whatever jurisdiction you plan to operate in. Number 2, a transitional period of 45 days until March 10th, 2023 will be granted to existing companies within which to provide the FSA with a certified copy of requisite licensing for the jurisdictions/authorities in which their business activities are being conducted. no filing fees will be incurred for these filings. Failure to adhere to these requirements will result in the application of sanctions against the company in accordance with the FSA Act, or the Financial Services Authority Act. Registered agents and trustees should continue to apply sound anti-money laundering, counter-financing, or terrorism practices in ensuring that adequate screening measures and appropriate due diligence measures are utilized on a risk-sensitive basis when onboarding clients, directors, shareholders, and beneficial owners who wish to incorporate such firm companies in St. Vincent and Grenadines. So all it's saying, guys, in a nutshell, is that, hey, guys, we understand there's a growing complaint coming in from other companies and governments and people regarding forex trading of companies that are registered with us. So moving forward, you guys have to provide proof that you are regulated and licensed to trade in that special authority, right? You have to show some type of proof. And so that is where the dilemma is. All right, so I'm gonna show how this really is going to impact Novatech and how it's going to impact us moving forward. But before we do, let me share a couple of more articles with you. All right, so the Canadian Securities Administrators, you know what, I'm not going to go too much in this. I just wanted to share that there are, they basically administer the regulations in regards to when it comes to crypto exchanges, and they are in partnership with the IIROC, which basically brokers or anybody who has trading platforms have to register with in order to comply with like Canadian laws and regulations. So for example, because Novatech has the MT5 trader, they will have to register with the IIROC even if they're trading in crypto. So now it looks like they're coming up with ways to work together to kind of regulate this thing, but as of now there's actually no kind of actual law yet when it comes to crypto. Companies such as ForTrade, if you are Canadian and you actually use ForTrade, they actually do not allow you to trade crypto on their platform just because it's not regulated, but you could trade forex. So if you're trading forex in general, you have to be licensed with IIROC in order to be a licensed and regulated broker to provide that service to Canadians. And if you're in crypto, well, they're just kind of figuring that out. So for crypto exchanges, if you're like a broker or exchange, then you have to you fall under this umbrella, right? It's crypto trading platforms. So it's a lot of gray areas, and that's the problem. Like there's nothing really tangent. And so because there's so many gray areas, people are just trying to figure it out right now. And then here you have the companies that can go, I guess you can use as a Canadian that are licensed, and these are the partners, the authorized partners. And then of course you have those that are banned. Of course you have KuCoin here as Canadian. So it's not like you can't use KuCoin. However, using KuCoin, you're not protected, right? And Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin.com or Binance, I think it was. Binance was actually banned from Canada, and Canadians can't use Binance because they didn't follow their regulations. So as you can see here, you have Newton. So some of you guys use Newton. I use Newton, and so they're also regulated. And then you have like ShapePay, I think is Quebec owned. So Quebec, they will fall under the laws of Quebec because that's where they're registered. So it depends on the local authority that you live in or where you live. That would be the authority that will kind of operate these exchanges. So the next thing I want to share with you, which will make a bulk of this video, and I just want to say, guys, be patient. And because of the information I'm going to provide will give you a better sense as to what's going on and the options for Novatech and the options for us as investors, right? So I want to share this with you because I think it's information people are not providing, and there's a lot of confusion and a lot of kind of misguidance and misinformation out there. So I just want to let you guys know legally what they're able to do and why it is they stop trading. And so I think the fact that they have stopped trading, to me, is actually the right step to do after going through all of this information, and I'm going to share that with you in a moment. So let's read a couple of articles. Yes, it's going to take a little time, but just bear with me because I think the information here is imperative into understanding what Novatech is, where they are, and where they're headed, and the options they have. All right. Here on May 4th, 2023, Capital Fund Law Group is a law firm with basically a post, some blog post that I think is very valuable. It breaks down a lot of the questions that a lot of people have, and it also breaks down the confusion that people have that, hey, Novatech should be registered or Novatech shouldn't be registered. So we're going to read through it, and then you're going to have a better sense as to exactly what they're talking about. So the SEC and CFTC regulation for startup cryptocurrency hedge funds. Okay, it's a 5-minute read, but it's going to take longer because I'm going to explain some things. All right, so this article provides an overview of CFTC and SEC regulation of cryptocurrency hedge funds for hedge fund managers investing in various strategies involving Bitcoin and alternative cryptocurrencies. Our law firm focuses on advising hedge fund managers throughout the world in starting and operating U.S. and offshore hedge funds. During the past several months, we have received more inquiries for starting cryptocurrency hedge funds, including Bitcoin funds and coin alternative funds, than for all other hedge fund strategies combined. Hedge fund investing in cryptocurrency. This article is directed primarily to managers looking to start a cryptocurrency fund to invest in Bitcoin and alternative coins directly. The most common questions we hear from startup cryptocurrency fund managers involve the regulatory requirements imposed on cryptocurrency funds by the CFTC and the SEC. So common questions include, must a cryptocurrency fund register with the CFTC? Second one is, must a cryptocurrency fund registered with the SEC as an RIA, which is a registered investment advisor, or otherwise comply with state investment advisor regulation? And question number 3 is, must a cryptocurrency fund satisfy 3C1 or 3C7 Investment Company Act exemptions? So I'm going to try my best to kind of explain this. I know it's a lot of like mumbo jumbo and legal terms and all that, so some of y'all kind of like going over your head, but I'm going to break it down and keep it simple so you guys can kind of get an idea. So the first question is, must a cryptocurrency fund register with the CFTC? The short answer of it is no, they don't. You don't have to actually register with them. If the fund manager only purchased cryptocurrency outright, so if the fund manager, the person who manages the fund, remember we have the fund, right? The GP, the general partner, right, is the one that manages the fund. If the fund manager is just purchasing cryptos and keeping it in the fund, then they don't have to register with the CFTC. And then they go on to say, but yes, they think you should if the fund manager purchased cryptocurrencies with margin, leverage, or as a futures contract. Their analysis is below, so we're going to go into it more deeply. So what are they saying? Well, if you're going to not just buy and hold it, but if you're going to trade it, if you're going to buy a portion of it, if you're going to use it as leverage, if you're going to sell it, then this is what they think you should do. So cryptocurrencies are commodities subject to the CFTC. The CFTC, which regulates commodities, futures, swaps, and currencies, has stated that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will be treated different than currency under the Commodities Exchange Act of 1934, which is also known as the Commodities Act, since it does not have legal tender status in any jurisdiction. However, the CFTC has stated that Bitcoin and other blockchain-based virtual currencies are commodities under Section 189 of the Commodities Act and subject to the CFTC regulation. And then they have here a case law. So this paragraph, all it's saying is, you know what? Cryptocurrency is not an actual currency. It's not a legal tender in any jurisdiction, so it doesn't fall really under the act. However, it's still deemed a commodity, so it falls under a certain portion of the act, right? And it's subject to certain things. So that's all it's saying. And then it gives reference to one of the actual cases they had, which is this one. All right, so next thing is leverage and futures. Cryptocurrency fund managers that invest in cryptocurrency futures contracts as opposed to straight cryptocurrencies are required to register as a CTA and CPO with the CFTC. There's a lot of acronyms, sorry guys, and with the National Futures Association, NFA, or satisfy an exemption. Also, because of additions to the Dodd-Frank Act, cryptocurrency hedge fund managers that use leverage or margin will also need to register with CFTC and NFA. The Dodd-Frank Act amended the Commodities Act to add new authority over certain leverage margins or finance retail transactions and so forth. So all it's saying is if you're going to actually operate your fund and trade futures with cryptocurrency or of such, then you got to kind of register not only with the FTC, but also with the NFA. That's all it's literally saying, if you're going to leverage and sell cryptocurrency with futures. Now, number 2 is, must cryptocurrency fund register as an RIA with the SEC or comply with state investment advisor regulation? Well, for most funds investing in cryptocurrency, the answer will be it depends. We recommend the startup fund managers take reasonable preemptive precautions to act as if cryptocurrencies were already designated as securities. Note also that this cryptocurrency fund in itself is a security and must satisfy an exemption from registration under the Securities Act of 1933, usually Regulation D, Rule 506, and we can read more about that. So I will do a separate video to really break down what Regulation D 506 is. People need to understand this law in the space, because even though crypto is not regulated, ideally it's kind of falls under security. So although it's not regulated, there's a high probability a country can kick you out if you're not meeting their regulation requirement, right? So that's where the kind of gray area is. Also, any funds such as fund of funds investing in cryptocurrency or any other funds will need to follow investment advisor regulation. Now, the next thing is, are cryptocurrencies securities? And this is kind of like the number one question people have. The Investment Company Act of 1940, which is also referred as the Company Act, discussed below, the Investment Advisors Act of 1940, which is also known as the Advisors Act, as well as state investment advisor laws, impose regulations on hedge funds that invest in securities. The Securities and Exchange Commission, also known as the SEC, is currently determining how to treat cryptocurrency as an asset class, but for now, it has not given definite guidance. The SEC has stated that a cryptocurrency could be a security depending on how the digital token was created. The key question for both the Advisors Act and the Company Act is whether Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are deemed to be securities. All right, so I want to break this down a little bit more for you. So what it's saying here is the SEC is determining, they're not sure whether cryptocurrency will fall under as a security. They haven't really put parameters around it. And you guys who don't know what the SEC is, they kind of regulate stocks, right? So if a company wants to go public and they want to sell stocks and they want investment advisors and firms and companies to buy their stocks or whatever, pension funds, it could be insurance companies, they have to go through the SEC and file basically license and registration with them, because it has to be regulated. And that's where the insider trading secrets come in and all these things. They have to regulate that to protect investors. They're saying if somebody's creating a coin, a Bitcoin, a Qcoin, creating any type of cryptocurrency, will it fall under this act? So this is technically not, let's say, Novatech trading it per se. This is if Novatech came up with its own coin, would this be falling under the act? Will it be considered a security? Do they have to register? And that's where the gray line is. So they have something called the Howey test. And the Howey test is like this. It says the Seminole Supreme Court case for determining whether an instrument meets the definition of security is, of course, they have the reference for the case. And here it says, according to Howey, an investment instrument, namely an investment contract, meets the definition of security if there is 1, an investment of money, 2, in a common enterprise, 3, with an expectation of profits, and 4, solely from the efforts of others. Example, it's promoted, like it has a promoter or a third party is promoting it. So when you look at all these parameters, an investment of money for Novatech, are people investing? Yes. Is it a common enterprise? Is it a business? It is. With the expectation of profits, yes, they're expecting money, and solely from the efforts of others. For example, someone's promoting it, a third party, technically it's kind of word of mouth, you could say yes there, right? So in other words, you could say that it passes the Howey test and you could consider it a security, all right? Now, the third question was, must a cryptocurrency fund satisfy basically these sections? Investment Company Act exemptions. So these are exemptions. So we're going to read a little bit about what they are, and they're very actually a little bit interesting. The Company Act generally requires investment companies to register with the SEC as mutual funds unless they meet an exemptions. Cryptocurrency funds and hedge funds generally can be structured under one or two exemptions from registration under the Investment Company Act. Section 3C1 allows a fund to have up to 100 investors. Section 3C7 allows a fund to have an unlimited number of investors, but practically it should be limited to 2,000 to avoid being deemed a publicly traded partnership under the SEC Act, but requires significant higher net worth suitability requirement for each investor, roughly $5 million for individuals, $25 million for entities. As a general rule, most startup funds are structured as 3C1 because of the lower investor suitability requirements. And to read more about how the company impacts hedge fund in their white paper, they have somewhere something you can click for reference. Now, I just want to state here, just to clarify what they're saying. They're saying that there's exemptions, and so what happens is any company that wants to trade in securities, you have options. You have the option to get licensed at the state level. If you don't get licensed at the state level, meaning if you want to operate in the state of Houston, in the state of California, or in the state of Florida, you have to get licensed in the state level. And once you do, you can trade for that specific state. The next option is to get licensed under the SEC, which is the federal level. And if you're licensed there and you follow their parameters, literally it trumps all the state laws, right, and regulations. So you can literally trade all over the US. Now, if that doesn't happen, there's some things called exemptions, meaning with exemptions, the SEC doesn't necessarily regulate you, right? However, there are some things you have to follow in certain parameters, and the law, the section 3C1 states that, hey, if you are going to go through this exemption, you can only have up to 100 investors. Now, the 100 investors has to be accredited investors. I'll make another video to explain that more. If you want to just be able to have any unlimited number of investors, it's not limited to 100 investors, you can. However, the minimum net worth is going to be $5 million, and for companies $25 million, they have to be eligible. You got to prove that you actually did your due diligence and they have that net worth in order for them to be able to invest into your fund. They also have advertisement restrictions. They also have disclosure restrictions and requirements. So there's a whole set of rules and laws that they have to follow. And even at section 3C7, even after they get 2,000 investors, if they go more than that, it's going to be deemed a publicly traded partnership. And there's other rules that it now just jumps into. So as you can see, there's just so many subsections, and of course, because of experience, they have amended it over time, and that's why all these rules exist. So until the SEC provides guidance designating cryptocurrencies as securities, there is no definite requirement to comply with the Company Act exemptions. So you don't even have to comply with the exemptions if you're just trading in cryptocurrency. Remember, cryptocurrency is not regulated. However, if you trade Forex or you trade stocks, they are. So you would have to get SEC compliance and whatever compliance in whatever jurisdiction that you are trading in. However, if you are just doing crypto, there's no regulation. So you don't even have to follow exemptions, right? So it says, but they believe, however, as stated above, the likelihood of cryptocurrencies being deemed securities is great enough, meaning it's high. They recommend that startup cryptocurrencies comply now with the Company Act preemptively, so willingly comply with the act, meaning you don't have to register physically, you don't have to follow exemptions like physically, but you should comply with the act. You should follow what the act says. For most startup funds, this would mean limiting investors within a given fund to less than 100 beneficial owners. So how would this play with Novatech? Well, if that's the case and they're going to comply, first of all, it's only limited to 100 investors, so not everyone can invest. Two, it's going to be accredited investors, $200,000 to $300,000 per year in income and a certain level of assets. I think it's $1 million you have to have. If not, you can go to as many investors as you want, but hey, the minimum net worth is $5 million and 25 for companies. So you can see how all the restrictions are there. The normal person will not have the opportunity to invest in these kind of things. All right, so let's now move forward. SEC and CFTC's jurisdiction over cryptocurrency hedge fund managers involving fraud. So I'm not going to read too much of this. All it's going to say here in this paragraph, keep it short, is that if there's fraud, it doesn't matter if you're exempt, if you're not exempt, if it's cryptocurrency, if it's not regulated, they are going to take enforcement and take action when fraud comes in. So as soon as fraud comes in, then it's going to fall under their guidelines and they will take action. That's all they're saying. So other cryptocurrency regulations, it says various U.S. regulatory bodies, self-regulating agencies, and regulatory bodies throughout the world have or are in the process of regulating this new asset class. Most of these regulations for now are not likely to have a major impact on the majority of startup fund managers that merely invest in cryptocurrency, but can directly impact funds that go beyond purchasing cryptocurrency outright and are involved with ICOs, setting up exchanges, and other activities. So you're just saying, if you're not just buying and holding cryptocurrency, if you're doing anything other than that, it might pose a problem for you down the road if you are not compliant with the regulations. These regulations include IRS regulations, designating cryptocurrency as property, FinCEN's view cryptocurrency as a currency, regulating those who run platforms for exchanging cryptocurrency as a money service business, and also under the Bank Secrecy Act and others. So what do they recommend? And here is where I wanted to share this with you guys. So based on their internal analysis of SEC trends involving initial coin offerings, we believe that the possibility that the SEC designating cryptocurrency funds is high enough that we recommend that emerging cryptocurrency funds act as much as reasonably possible as though cryptocurrencies were regulated as securities with the SEC and as if the fund were already subject to the Advisors Act. So they're saying, even though it's not regulated, they advise that you should structure and preemptively, willingly to set up your fund like that and to follow and be compliant. They're just saying, do it willingly, right? Because it's just going to help you down the road. But it's not a must. If you don't, you're not breaking laws, but you should do it willingly. This is not to say that funds should necessarily preemptively register with the SEC or state securities division. So they're not saying you should register with the state or to go and sign up with the SEC, but you should consider taking reasonable precautions such as offering investments solely to qualified clients in certain states as per the Advisors Act. So again, those 100 investors are accredited investors. But if you want more investors, you have to go to a higher level of net worth. So that's about 5 million. So there's laws that can govern that. They're just saying, if you're going to create a crypto fund and it's not just holding crypto and you're going to trade and buy contracts or futures, whatever, you have to follow these laws. Not have to, but if you should follow. They recommend and advise that you should follow these laws. With that said, if you guys want to read more, guys, there's more underneath this video. I put the link in the description area. Go ahead and read it because I think it's a good read, get a better understanding. And so it's not just because of Novatech, it's for any investment vehicle you're going to invest in the space. You kind of need to know the laws, especially the laws in your country. Know what they are, because now I know what they are, so I can look at funds. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos to just be analyzing funds and telling people, guys, they're not registered, be careful, here are the risks, and then just educating people, especially newbies in the space. I just want to encourage everybody that just be mindful of your rules and your laws and your regulations where you are, because it governs your investments and what you can or can't do. All right, so I want you to note a couple of things. First of all, U.S. forex brokers are regulated by the Commodities Futures Trade Commission, which is CFTC, and the National Futures Association, which is the NFA. And then for securities, it's regulated by the SEC. As for Canada, forex brokers are regulated by the Investment Industry Regulation Organization of Canada, and also for the Canadian Securities Administration, which I can put here, but the CSA, right? So I bring this up because Novatech is actually a forex broker or cryptocurrency broker, where you can actually trade on their platform using your MT5. Because they do that service, they have to actually fall under this. So they'll have to get licensed here, especially with forex, right? If I go on the platform and I want to trade forex, if they want to get Canadians involved, they have to be licensed under IROC, right? For forex, 100%. For crypto, it might be with CSA and IROC. Right now, it's kind of gray area. It's not too sure, but they should still get licensed, at least with IROC. And then for CFTC and NFA, that's for the US. If they want US residents to use their platform to trade crypto or any type of forex or even stocks, they got to fall under this guideline. That's why I bring that up. Question is, if Novatech wants to be a trading broker in Canada and the US, it would have to be licensed under the CFTC or IROC. Of course, I mentioned that. And if it wants to trade forex and make a profit, it either has to be licensed and regulated under the SEC or in the state in which it looks to operate in, or they have to fall under an exemption. For example, the Regulation D Rule 506 exemption, which is governed by Section 482 of the Securities Act of 1933. So all it's saying here, guys, okay, let me be clear on something. Novatech doesn't need to be licensed to trade, all right? The problem is, if you were listening in the beginning, this is where I took my time to explain those two letters from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which states in their memorandum that, hey, right now we're getting a lot of complaints. If you want to continue trading activities, right? Before it was like standoffish. We don't regulate anything. If somebody's going to trade, it's at their own risk. But because they've been getting so many complaints, maybe Novatech, maybe other companies, I don't know, they want to keep the integrity of their financial system and still have a good reputation so that they can attract good businesses and investments into the country and not piss off all the other country regulators, right? So they want to ensure they protect themselves and protect their system. Because of that, they say, hey, now if you want to have access to trade in our company or in our country, you have to have this. And what that is now is an actual license stating proof that you're able to trade in the jurisdiction that you're operating in. And because Novatech operates all over the world, it would have to show proof in every jurisdiction. That's a lot of work, right? They would have to show proof in Canada, and in Canada, every single province. So they have to go to every single province to get licensed. And in the States, either the SEC or they have to follow the exemption. If they follow the exemption, investors like you and I might not qualify because the exemption requires certain level of investors only that are able to invest into the platform. If they don't do it that route, and let's say they want to just get the general public, then they may have to go to the SEC, and then they can offer some of these services, but then they will be under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of regulations and disclosures and a bunch of stuff, right? So that's an option. It's not like they can't do it, but everything has its pros and cons, right? So right now, as it stands, although they, like this lawyer says, you don't have to be licensed when you're doing crypto. The problem with that is because St. Vincent and the Grenadines put this law out, now Novatech has to. So they're stuck in kind of like in limbo where it's like they can't trade because St. Vincent and the Grenadines has put this stipulation that they need proof that they can trade in the jurisdiction that they want. And then all these other countries just kick them out. So if they continue to trade in these jurisdictions, right, they're actually no longer compliant. And that is the problem. So the problem is, it's like they're in a catch-22. So they either get licensed and they continue to trade, or they get kicked out, or they have to only take investors' money where they're compliant, right? Or there's no registration required or licensing, they got to prove that, right? So that's part of the problem. So reading on, in Canada, for them to trade in Canada, they will have to be licensed and regulated by the security regulator for that province. So for example, in Ontario, it's the OSC, Ontario Securities Commission. In BC or British Columbia, it would be the British Columbia Securities Commission. In, let's say, Quebec, it's going to be AMF. And in Alberta, it's the ASC, right? The Alberta Securities Commission. So Novatech is in a gray area. If they are trading in Forex, then it's going to actually fall under securities in Forex, and they will have to either register or have to fall under the exemption rule. So if they're going to trade Forex, then they have to be registered. But if they're doing crypto, they don't have to be registered. But at the end of the day, if they want to trade crypto in the jurisdiction that they're taking investors' money from, then they have to, in accordance to what St. Vincent and the Grenadine law states now in their memorandum, right? So reading on, like I said, if they are trading cryptocurrency, although not regulated, they should still get registered. So when it does get regulated, they also have a good foundation, and they also comply with St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So as it stands, Novatech is compliant. However, as we stated before, St. Vincent and the Grenadines requires that they get licensed in the jurisdiction that it's operating in, or else it has to cease its operation. And that's the dilemma, guys. That's the problem. So yes, they have a good trading strategy. They've been making us money. It's great, and we all have enjoyed the benefit. The issue is now they've gotten a bit larger and people are complaining and a bunch of stuff are happening. So regulators are stepping in and they're putting pressure on St. Vincent and Grenadines, and they got to also step up. And so now, because of that, they're saying that, hey, if you want to continue, this is how it has to go, right? This is how it has to go. So what are some of the options? Well, I'm going to share with you what some of the options are and what you can do. Okay, guys, I hope you found value in my little investigation and explanation. And the reason I know so much about this is because I wanted to start a hedge fund, and they kind of shared all this with us. But I knew that as long as the rules in St. Vincent and the Grenadines was not a requirement, then Novatech was actually in compliance. That's why I invested. And for me, it was like, whatever. So right now, though, they're requiring that they have to be licensed to continue being able to do their business activities in that country. And anyone else who registers a company moving forward has to show proof of licensing in the jurisdiction that they're going to actually be practicing in, because they don't want everybody coming after them and saying, hey, you're hard-hitting fraudsters, and they kind of want to keep the integrity of the financial system, and rightfully so. I think they should, right? So the question is, what does Novatech do from here, and what do you do from here? What are your options? Well, to me, here are the Novatech's options. Like, here are Novatech's true options. Option 1, don't do anything and prolong the process, and they'll be running for the rest of their life, which I don't think they'll do, but that's an option, right? Option 2 is give everybody back their money, right? Close down the system, and if they decide to build it again in the future, they could do it properly and get the proper licensing requirements. Unfortunately, though, a lot of us will not qualify under the regulations and the exemptions and the rules. We will not qualify as accredited investors or high net worth individuals, and many of us will not be able to invest in their company. So unless some of you are making $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, whatever the accredited investor rule is for that country or that state or province, you're not going to be able to invest. So most likely you will not be able to continue with Novatech. So that is the other option. So if they do get licensed, guys, there's a high probability they will not be able to take all the investors within Novatech, because a lot of us will not qualify under the exemptions. And then the other option is they could take their fund and re-register their fund in another company or another offshore place that doesn't have the restriction that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has on that fund. And then they can continue their operations and not have to worry about regulations. However, they will not be able to take money from Canadians and US investors. So they can still operate. They can take investors from other parts of the world, otherwise are the parts of the world that haven't restricted their citizens in investing. So that's another option they can take. The other option they could take is they could still be licensed with SVG. However, they will not be able to take money from jurisdictions that require licensing. So they could still take investors' money from jurisdictions that don't require any regulations. Could be Africa, some parts of Africa, maybe some parts of Europe or whatever country, but most developed countries have regulations in place. So they will most likely only be taking money from third world countries, like, you know, and I don't think there's a lot of those investors with a lot of capital around, you know what I mean? So those are their options. Now for us, for me personally, our options are these. Number 1, we could sit here and hope they come back and think they're going to do their other activities. And by the way, the reason they stop their activities is if they continue doing their activities, to be honest with you, they're not compliant under the St. Vincent and the Grenadine law right now that they set by, I think, end of March or whatever it is. If they continue their activities and they haven't provided licensing, that they're basically in violation. So by them still trading, they kind of were in violation for like a month, right? And that's probably my opinion why they have ceased trading. And I think rightfully so, they should stop, because they're not in compliance, and then that's just breaking the law. All right, so you as an investor can, again, be so hopeful that they're coming back, but truthfully, they can't. Legally, they can't, right? They're tied. Their hands are tied. They can't. So they have to make a decision based on the options they have to either move their company into a completely different jurisdiction where their fund is in a completely different jurisdiction and continue their operations with limited investors, or they dissolve this whole thing, start it again and do it properly, or they just get licensed. But if they do, a lot of us will not qualify to invest. So a lot of you guys will not be able to continue investing with Novatech, and that's just the sad truth. So then the question is, Mark, what can I do? Honestly speaking, right now, I think we all should find a way to, I don't know, file a petition or something just to request that Novatech communicates with us. But I definitely think they will be giving our money back. And me personally, for me, I've just decided in this space, knowing what I know right now, even though things are not regulated with crypto, it is just so many things in the air that is just so uncertain that I think the best thing to do is to learn to trade yourself. And I think you have more control over that. You dictate what you're going to do. You dictate, like, you have more control. And I understand a lot of people don't have that talent. A lot of people don't want to learn. I get it. But the problem is, if you are going to invest in these entities, they're doing everything right. Maybe they are investing. Maybe they don't need licensing and regulations and whatever. But the problem is, as soon as it gets big or as soon as complaints happen, they just have such a high probable cause of being shut down. And Novatech is proof. And I've realized every space, every company, sooner or later shuts down. And it's just, there's no longevity. And for me, I can't plan. I can't sit and base my financial goals on hypothetical situations and maybes. I want a solid plan, something I can really say, okay, I know in 5 years if I do this, this is what I can get. Like, I just want to be honest with myself, and I can't do that with knowing what I know now, because the system is not designed for that. And there's just so many bureaucracies and stuff that you got to go through. Even starting a hedge fund, knowing what I know now, if I start one, I can't get the everyday Joe Blow to come and invest. I have to go after accredited investors. Or if I want everyday Joe Blow, I have to get registered with the SEC. And then there's just so much scrutiny and regulations and so many things, paperwork, just so many things that just makes it more difficult. And again, you have to get an auditor, an audit. Like, there's so many, it's like you're being babied by a parent every single minute because they want to protect investors, and rightfully so. I think they should. All right. So guys, I hope this video helps you. I hope I cleared up some things with you. All I want to say is, in the beginning, Novatech was compliant until complaints went in to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they put out a notice and a memorandum saying that if Novatech doesn't comply, and specifically Novatech, but any company who's trading Forex does not comply with its new rule that you have to show proof of licensing in the jurisdiction that you are actually trading in, then you have to cease your operations and you cannot continue doing business with our country. And that's where Novatech is right now. So by their law, Novatech has to get licensed in order to continue its activities. The question is, are they going to get licensed? We don't know. I don't know. They haven't said anything. They haven't communicated anything to anybody. But I strongly believe, if you still have hope that they will come back, just know that if they do, the odds are stacked against you, that as an investor, you will not even qualify anymore if they are regulated to partake in whatever they're doing. So if that's the case, you might as well just get your money back and find something else to do, or learn to trade. Like I said, I'm just going to learn to trade because I have more control over that. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, like this video. I want to hear from you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.